After Baldur's Gate 3, there seems to be an increased interest in RPGs, not just in games with leveling and XP systems, but in games with actual roleplay and choices. So I decided to create a video about my favorite old RPGs. Although their graphics and gameplay seem extremely outdated, I think you can still easily get into any of these games. Each one immerses you into a unique world with incredible stories and dialogues, and this stuff doesn't get old. Now is a great moment to discuss these games, as you can buy all 5 of them on Steam Winter Sale for like $30. So let's dive in. The first game is Arcanum, developed by Troika Games and published in 2009. I could have put here a lot of other classic isometric RPGs like Fallout 1 or 2 or Planescape Torment, but I decided to talk about Arcanum because first, it's one of my favorite childhood games, and second, because of unique setting. The game takes place in a fantasy world with various races like elves, dwarves, halflings, orcs, and many others, which is fairly typical. But what's unique about this world is its main conflict, the dichotomy of magic and technology. Magic represents sort of natural state of the world. However, with technological progress, magic has become weaker. These two entities are fundamentally different and cannot coexist. What's really cool about this game is that the magic and technology dichotomy exists not only on the narrative level, but also affects gameplay. Your character has a magic technology scale or spectrum. If you level up spells, your scale goes to the magic side. If you level up technological skills, your scale goes to the technology side. And this scale directly affects gameplay. The more magical you are, the more effective your spells, but also the less effective technologies are in your hands. At some point, you won't be able to use technologies at all. Simultaneously, if you are well versed in technologies, you won't be able to use magic effectively, even if you know spells. This system also affects dialogues and how NPCs react to you. If you are a sorcerer, technology-oriented characters do not like you, and vice versa. If you are a powerful mage, you might be denied a train ride because your magic affinity might interfere with the engine. Generally, the world of Arcanum is well designed. There are some interesting political conflicts between various factions, each race has a distinctive culture, and some races don't like each other.
I was saying that it was bloody rude of you to be asking me, a dwarf, for his name. It's not something to be thrown out and away like the day's rubbish.
The game raises some interesting questions related to industrialization and traditions versus innovations. The game definitely looks outdated. I wish the IP owner would release a remaster or even a remake. Nevertheless, if you like RPGs, and if you give this game a chance, it can still immerse you. The world is just so unique. Generally, steampunk is not a very popular setting in video games, and Arcanum uses this setting so well. You might encounter some technical issues when you try to play Arcanum on modern systems. Nothing unsolvable, just download a community patch.
You are a former prisoner who has been told by Zardas the Necromancer that dragons have come to conquer the country. And you have come to report this to the Paladins. That all sounds rather fantastic, but I cannot perceive that you are lying to me.
The second game is Gothic II, another childhood favorite of mine. It was developed by Piranha Bytes and published in 2002. This game is a bit different from other RPGs in this video, as there is a pre-established character and you have much less space for roleplay. The game unfolds in a fantasy world with dragons, orcs, and some other mostly typical stuff, and there is also a bit of Lovecraftian spirit in this game. There are multiple factions you can join: paladins, fire mages, and mercenaries who later transform into dragon hunters. Each faction has different goals and interests. Depending on your faction, some characters react differently to you. However, it does not change dialogues dramatically. You can also choose one of 3 professions: blacksmith, hunter, and alchemist. Basically, these are just different ways to make more money, but they're nice for roleplay. For example, if you want to join dragon hunters, it makes sense to choose hunting as your profession. Looking at this game now, what I think makes it relatively unique is its dynamic world. NPCs have schedules, they do different things depending on the time of day. Additionally, the game is split into several acts, and each act affects the world. First, it respawns all the monsters and adds new monsters. Second, each act progresses the world one way or another. It progresses events and adds new quests. So you sort of observe the world over time, and because of this, the world in this game feels quite alive, even by contemporary standards. There are no random encounters, but there are scripted encounters that change every time you go to the next act of the game. Additionally, there are no quest markers. When you get a quest, you receive some vague instructions, sometimes there are no instructions at all, and you need to figure out how to complete quests on your own. So exploration plays a huge role in this game. You kinda have to explore the world each time you progress it to the next act. In terms of graphics, I think this game aged a bit better than other early 3D games, but maybe it's because I played it a lot when I was a child. This stuff affects your perception of the game. On Steam sale, it costs $2.50, and I definitely recommend trying it. The game might suck you in if you give it a fair chance.
I want to show you something.
The next game is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, a 2004 RPG developed by Troika Games. Unlike the previous games, I didn't play this one in my childhood. In fact, I played it for the first time very recently, 2 or 3 years ago, and the game just shocked me. It sucked me in for 2 playthroughs, and this tells a lot considering how old this game is. What makes it even more impressive is the fact that I don't even like vampires as a setting. It's not something I find interesting, but the game just forced me to fall in love with this whole topic. I think it's because the game represents vampires in a very interesting way. It focuses on the society of vampires and its social conflicts. You play as a newly embraced vampire and you try to figure out how this community functions, both as a character in the game but also as a player. You can create your character as a member of one of the 7 clans. Personally, I think these clans are the most interesting thing in the game. Basically, each clan represents a different cultural archetype of vampires. Nosferatu are classic ugly monstrous vampires, Ventru a sort of aristocracy, Chimera are blood mages, and so on. Your clan affects both dialogues and gameplay. Each clan has special abilities that can be used in combat or dialogues. But there are also more radical differences. For example, if you play Nosferatu, it might be very challenging to go through the streets because you look like a monster. In many cases, you have to go through the sewers. Malkavians are kind of insane, like clinically insane, which heavily affects dialogues and adds new conversations. For example, sometimes you talk to a TV. I played a Malkavian in my second playthrough, and it was one of the most fun and interesting experience I ever had in video games. One thing I really like in this game is its XP system. Basically, you do not have levels. Sometimes you get XP points that you can spend to level up specific skills. And a very cool thing about this system is how you get XP points, by completing quests or some tasks. So you don't get XP for just killing someone. This encourages you to complete quests in various ways. Combat is not always the best way to complete your task, so there is some space for roleplay and replayability. At the very minimum, you can pick a different clan, and it might greatly affect how your playthrough feels. The game had a very difficult development history. If you want to learn more about it, I suggest listening to this podcast with one of the game's lead developers, Timothy Kane. He also has a very cool YouTube channel where he talks a lot about games he worked on like Fallout 1, Arcanum, Outer Worlds, and some others. The channel is definitely worth checking if you're interested in RPGs. I'll put links to both the channel and podcasts in the description. Anyway, because of the difficult development history, the game was published in a rough state, and it still has some serious technical issues. So it's worth downloading a community patch for it. I wish whoever wants the IP would release a remaster or maybe even a remake. I do not really understand why Paradox is working on a sequel for Vampire Bloodlines. If they just do a remake of the first game, it would be just so great. Nevertheless, even the current version of the game is worth playing. It immerses you in a unique setting that is not about bad and good sides, but about various groups and their practical interests, which is a very rare thing in video games.
From where you're kneeling must seem like an 18-carat run of bad luck. Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
The next game is Fallout New Vegas, developed by Obsidian Entertainment and published by Bethesda in 2010. It feels weird discussing this game because so much has already been said about its greatness and some flaws. If you want a long explanation, watch this an hour and a half essay from H. Bomber Guy. But to put it briefly, what I think makes Fallout New Vegas so great is its world and stories make sense. A lot of games in post-apocalyptic settings focus on what was, focus on the world of the past that was destroyed. Fallout New Vegas focuses on the new world that emerged from the ashes of the old one, and it pictures a very believable new world. You believe that factions and groups you encounter can actually exist in the game's world. They fit. The same goes for stories and quests. They make sense in the world of Fallout New Vegas. In so many games, there are factions, characters, or quests that does not make any sense inside the world of the game. They do not fit. Take Fallout 3 as an example. I know many people like this game, I like it too, but it has so many things that just do not make sense. The first city you visit, Megaton, is built around an undetonated atomic bomb. Why? Why would anyone do it? It's a terrible place to build a city, one of the worst. Another example. In the same city you get a quest to search for food at a supermarket. And spoiler alert, you find it! So 200 years since the nuclear war and you go to a supermarket to search for food and you find it. It just doesn't make any sense. It should be empty at this point after 200 years. That's what I meant when I said Fallout New Vegas' world and stories make sense. For me, the world building is the strongest part of this game. In New Vegas, people get food from farms, and caravans transport food throughout the world. And you can see both farms and caravans. Another very small example that surprised me when I noticed it were lampposts in cities and small camps. Each lamppost has a small battery attached to it, so it makes sense that these lampposts work. You can see how you get energy. This game has a lot of replayability potential because you can join various factions that affect your ending. It's cool that relationships with factions have gameplay implications. For example, if your relationship with Caesar Legion is hostile, they will send assassin squads after you. I also really like the general vibe of this game, sort of Wild West setting. It is an old game, but sometimes the desert still looks mesmerizing. One huge issue with this game is its technical state. It still crashes quite often without patches. I really want a remake of this game. The same world, quests, but better gunplay. It would be just perfect. Microsoft, I beg you, just stop developing everything and make a Fallout New Vegas remake. However, even in its current state, the game feels great. I haven't played it on release. I played it 5 or 6 years ago for the first time and I was shocked at how good it is.
Board is green. Approach run has begun.
The last game, or I guess a series, that I want to discuss is Mass Effect, developed by BioWare. The first Mass Effect was published in 2007, the second in 2010, and the third in 2012. Recently, in 2021, all 3 games were remastered and published under the name Mass Effect Legendary Edition. And thank God they did. From the bottom of my heart, thank you BioWare and Electronic Arts for this. You can buy Legendary Edition for like $5 on steamsale, which is honestly insane. I had to put at least one BioWare game on my list. We created so many great RPGs. Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Knights of the Old Republic, Dragon Age Origin. However, for me, Mass Effect stands out as BioWare's most unique game, for 2 reasons. First, the world or universe of Mass Effect itself. When it comes to sci-fi games and movies, a lot of them feel generic. You either have space elves, space orcs, and other fantasy races in space, or some sort of Star Trek-inspired universe. In contrast, the world of Mass Effect feels original and authentic. Drew Karpyshyn, the lead writer for the first 2 Mass Effect games, did such an insanely good job at creating various races and factions. Each race is very different from others, each race has its own culture, and traits, and rituals. The second reason Mass Effect holds a special place in my RPG heart is the scale of its events. The choices you make in the first game have consequences in the third game. So this is an actual trilogy that has interconnected stories. It is literally a unique game. Maybe the Witcher series comes a bit close here because what you do in Witcher 2 affects some stuff in Witcher 3, but to much lesser degree than in Mass Effect. Additionally, the choices you make in Mass Effect are huge. You can destroy a race, you can save a race. You make choices that have grand consequences. All 3 games follow the story of Shepard and his fight against the Reapers. Your roleplay space is a bit limited because Shepard is somewhat pre-established character, but still you can play him in various ways. You can make your Shepard a militaristic captain who follows orders and values completing the task above all else. You can play him as a xenophobe character who hates other races, or the opposite of that. You can be more empathetic or more cynical. The game raises some interesting questions like the question of multiculturalism. How can races with very different cultures coexist together? The story also has many allusions to Christianity, and generally the story is very interesting. Additionally, the music and direction in this game are insanely great, especially for an RPG, even by contemporary standards. Just listen to this. Direction is very captivating from the beginning to the end. The game has many memorable scenes. A lot more can be said about Mass Effect, but I probably should wrap it up. I definitely recommend buying the whole trilogy. For $5 on sale, it's an insane value. Playing it as a trilogy is probably the best way, as it feels like a grand cosmic saga. I think all the games I mentioned in this video age relatively well, because their strong parts are stories, dialogues, and world design, and these things do not get old. If you give them a chance, they still can captivate you. As I mentioned, I played Vampire Bloodlines and Fallout New Vegas just a couple of years ago for the first time, and they felt great. However, there are some technical issues with almost all the games I discussed. Most of them require community patches to even launch. And I hope all of them get remasters like Mass Effect or even remakes. They definitely deserve it. Let me know in the comments what are your favorite old RPGs, or remakes of what RPGs you would like to see. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe.